Tourism is often about adventure and exploring the unknown, but sometimes it ends in tragedy. In this video, we'll uncover 5 more real stories of the worst deaths in the history of tourism, events where dreams of travel turned into nightmares. These stories serve as a reminder of the risks that can come with seeking adventure. It was August 17, 2024, in Mauritius, a tropical island known for its stunning beaches and clear blue waters. Zalia Shamigulova, a 29-year-old university teacher from Russia, had traveled there for a vacation. She was adventurous and well-known online, having even carried the Olympic torch during the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. During her trip, she shared joyful updates with friends and family, saying she was catching happiness every day. But her vacation would soon take a tragic turn. That day, Zalia had plans to meet Puryaveer Singh Sundur, a 29-year-old IT engineer from Mauritius. The two had connected on the dating app Tinder, and what started as a casual meeting would soon become something much darker. Closed-circuit television footage captured Zalia for the last time as she left her rental flat near Flic-on-Flac Beach. She was seen getting into a blue Toyota driven by Sundur, who had offered her a ride. After that, she vanished. Her travel companion grew worried when she didn't return that evening. By the next day, Zalia's family in Russia received strange messages claiming she had chosen to disappear and didn't want to be contacted. This was completely unlike her. She was always in touch with her loved ones, and her sudden silence sent waves of panic through her family. Days passed with no sign of Zalia. Then on August 22nd, authorities made a grim discovery: a body buried in a shallow grave in La Marie, a residential area on the island. The remains were identified as Zalia's. She had suffered multiple stab wounds, and an unsettling detail emerged: her tongue had been removed. This disturbing discovery hinted at the violent nature of the attack and left investigators with many questions. Sundur, who had been taken into custody, led police to the burial site. His car contained crucial evidence, traces of blood, that tied him to the crime. When questioned, he admitted to everything. He claimed he had been deeply in love with Zalia and believed they were planning a future together. But according to him, he had discovered something about her that filled him with rage. He took her on a sightseeing trip, but at some point anger overwhelmed him. He attacked her, causing fatal injuries, then hastily buried her body in a remote location. His confession raised more questions than answers. Was his story true, or was there more to it? Zalia had been full of life, sharing her experiences with those who followed her online. Just days before her death, she had spoken about happiness. No one could have imagined how quickly things would change. Her family was devastated. She had planned to continue her travels to Madagascar on September 1st. Instead, she never made it home. Investigators continued looking into the case, unsure if Sundur had acted alone. Some of Zalia's belongings were missing, and authorities questioned whether there were others involved. The shocking details of her final moments left people wondering: did she sense danger before it was too late? Mauritius, a popular destination for travelers, was shaken by the news. A trip that started with excitement had ended in tragedy. Tourists who once felt safe now reconsidered how much they trusted strangers. As authorities worked to piece together the full story, one thing remained clear: Zalia's life had been taken too soon by someone she barely knew. The dangers of meeting strangers, especially while traveling, became painfully real. Online connections, often made with good intentions, could sometimes lead to devastating consequences. What if Zalia had never met Sundur? Would she still be alive today, exploring the world as she had planned? These are questions no one can truly answer. Her tragic fate stands as a chilling reminder of how quickly things can change. It was January 3rd, 2025, on the Thai island of Yau Yai. Blanca Ojanguren Garcia, a 22-year-old law and international relations student from Spain, was spending time at the Koh Yao Elephant Care Center. She had been studying abroad at Tam Kang University in Taiwan and decided to visit Thailand before completing her degree. This trip was supposed to be a memorable experience, but it ended in tragedy. Blanca was taking part in a popular activity, bathing elephants. Many tourists visit the sanctuary each year for close encounters with these animals in what is considered a safe environment. However, while she was washing one of the elephants, she suddenly became agitated. The animal struck Blanca with its trunk, knocking her to the ground. The impact caused severe injuries. Around 18 other tourists, including Blanca's boyfriend, witnessed the incident. Initially, some reports suggested she had been injured by the elephant's tusks, but later confirmation stated it was the force of the trunk that caused her fatal wounds. Staff immediately called for help and she was rushed to the nearest hospital. But despite doctors' efforts, she did not survive. Following the tragedy, the Ko Yao Elephant Care Center temporarily closed. The facility housed 3 elephants, including the one involved in the incident. Although the sanctuary had a strong reputation for ethical treatment, experts noted that even well-cared-for animals can react unpredictably, especially when exposed to frequent human interaction. Blanca's sudden passing raised concerns about the risks of elephant tourism. While elephants are not typically aggressive, they can become defensive when stressed or overwhelmed. Some specialists believe that repeated exposure to crowds may increase anxiety in these animals, leading to unexpected reactions. Her boyfriend, who was with her during the accident, was devastated. Fortunately, no other visitors were harmed. The sanctuary, known for its controlled interactions with elephants, had been a favorite among tourists. However, this tragic event has brought attention to the potential dangers of getting too close to these powerful creatures. Blanca's family, including her parents and siblings, was heartbroken by the news. The Spanish Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed her passing and assisted in bringing her remains back home. Her body was first taken to Phuket before being transported to Spain. The Spanish ambassador to Thailand expressed condolences to her grieving loved ones. Her university, the University of Navarra, also released a statement mourning her loss. Professors and classmates remembered Blanca as a bright, hard-working student with a promising future. The impact of her passing was also felt in her hometown of Valladolid, where the city's mayor publicly expressed his sympathies. Blanca's case was eerily similar to another incident that happened just months earlier. In South Africa, a Spanish tourist named Carlos Luna lost his life when he was caught in the middle of a herd of elephants after stepping out of his vehicle to take photos. The similarities between these events have sparked further discussions about the risks of interacting with wild animals, even in controlled settings. Thailand is home to around 3,500 elephants, many of which live in sanctuaries, national parks, and tourism facilities. The demand for elephant encounters has grown significantly in the past decade, with nearly 2,800 elephants in captivity. While some places focus on ethical treatment, the constant presence of tourists can be stressful for the animals. Elephants are highly intelligent creatures with complex emotions. In the wild, they live in tight-knit family groups and roam vast areas. In captivity, their natural behaviors are often disrupted. Some experts believe excessive human contact can lead to distress, making their reactions unpredictable. Blanca's story is one of many incidents involving elephants and tourists. While rare, these cases highlight the challenge of keeping wild animals in environments where they regularly interact with people. Organizations like World Animal Protection have long spoken against using elephants for entertainment, calling for improved welfare and stricter safety measures in wildlife tourism. Could this tragedy have been prevented? Should sanctuaries enforce stricter regulations to protect both visitors and animals? Would limiting human interaction reduce these risks? These questions remain unanswered as discussions about ethical tourism continue. For now, the Ko Yao Elephant Care Center remains temporarily closed while authorities investigate. Meanwhile, Blanca's family and friends mourn a young woman who has so much ahead of her. This heartbreaking event serves as an example of the unpredictability of wild animals, even in places designed to keep them safe. Blanca Ohanguren. Garcia will be remembered not only for her academic achievements but also for the ongoing discussions her passing has sparked about wildlife tourism. As travelers continue seeking close encounters with these majestic creatures, the world must decide how to balance human experiences with the well-being of the animals they admire. It was the evening of July 12, 2017, At Maho Beach in St. Martin, a Caribbean island famous for its breathtakingly close view of airplanes landing and taking off at Princess Juliana International Airport, hundreds of tourists had gathered near the airport fence, eager to experience the powerful jet blast. Among them was Gayleen McEwen, a 57-year-old mother of 3 from New Zealand, who was on vacation with her husband Phil and 2 friends. Maho Beach is known for its unique but risky attraction, standing near the airport fence as planes take off. The force of the engines creates a powerful blast, which many tourists find thrilling. Despite clear warning signs advising people to stay back, many still take the risk, hoping to feel the intense rush of air. That evening, Gayleen and her group stood close to the fence, unaware that their vacation was about to take a tragic turn. At around 6 p.m., a Boeing 737 was preparing for takeoff, bound for Trinidad. As the engines roared to full power, the jet blast surged toward the crowd. The force was overwhelming. Gayleen, who had been gripping the fence, lost her hold and was thrown backward. She fell hard onto the concrete pavement behind her. Witnesses immediately rushed to her aid. A bystander performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation while waiting for medical help. Paramedics arrived and transported Gayleen to St. Martin Medical Center, but despite their efforts, she did not survive. The impact of the fall caused severe injuries, which ultimately led to her passing. Her family was in shock. Janice McEwen, Gayleen's sister-in-law, spoke about their grief, explaining how difficult it was to accept that someone so full of life had been lost so suddenly. Gayleen's daughter, Natasha, shared that the family was too heartbroken to talk about the incident at that time. The vacation that was supposed to be a time of joy turned into an unimaginable tragedy. Gayleen and Phil were well-respected business owners in New Zealand, running Blenheim Palms Motel together. They had also invested millions in a motel in Dunedin, which they opened in 2009. Their hard work and dedication made them well known in their community. This was the first recorded fatality at Maho Beach, despite several injuries over the years. Rolando Brisson, the island's director of tourism, expressed his condolences to the family and acknowledged the dangers of the activity. While the McEwen family recognized the risks, they deeply regretted not keeping a safer distance from the fence. Authorities had long been aware of the dangers at Maho Beach. Signs were placed around the area, warning visitors about the risks of standing too close. These warnings clearly stated that the blast from departing planes could cause serious injuries or worse. Yet, the thrill of the experience often outweighed caution for many tourists. Aviation experts, including Peter Clark, emphasized the dangers of standing in the path of jet engines. He explained that the force from a plane at full throttle is strong enough to throw people off their feet, sometimes with devastating consequences. He also pointed out that the takeoff blast is far more dangerous than the landing approach, as the engines operate at maximum power. Gayleen's tragedy was not the first close call at Maho Beach. In 2012, another woman was seriously injured when she was pushed into a concrete barrier by a jet blast. A video of the incident went viral, showing just how powerful and hazardous the experience could be. Sadly, that footage foreshadowed what would happen to Gayleen 5 years later. Despite these warnings and past incidents, thrill seekers continued to flock to the beach, eager to feel the power of the jet engines. Many ignored the posted safety signs, believing they could handle the force. Unfortunately, Gayleen's case was a devastating example of how quickly things could go wrong. After her passing, police urged tourists to follow the safety guidelines. Spokesman Ricardo Henson confirmed that while many had been injured over the years, Gayleen's loss deeply impacted the local community. Authorities reiterated the importance of keeping a safe distance from the runway to prevent similar tragedies. Gayleen's family had traveled to St. Martin expecting a memorable vacation, but they were instead faced with unimaginable grief. As they struggled to cope with their loss, questions remained. Could this have been prevented if the safety warnings were taken more seriously? Could authorities have done more to enforce safety measures? While those answers remain uncertain, one fact is clear. This tragedy serves as a serious lesson about the consequences of underestimating potential dangers. Even today, tourists continue to visit Maho Beach, drawn by the thrill of the jet blasts. However, Gayleen's story is a reminder that some risks should never be taken lightly. It was the evening of May 2024 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Alma Bohadana, a 22-year-old from Kibbutz Yassur in Israel, had been traveling through Brazil for months. She spent 3 months in Salvador before moving to Rio just 10 days earlier. That night, while exploring the Santa Teresa neighborhood with her travel companion Dan Hen, tragedy struck. Earlier that day, Alma and Dan had visited the famous Christ the Redeemer statue, one of Rio's top attractions. They were walking back when a red car suddenly pulled up beside them. One of the passengers got out and demanded Alma's belongings. Panicked, she tried to step back, but in the confusion she stumbled over a low barrier. Before she could regain her balance, Alma fell 15 meters or 49 feet into a wooded area below. The people in the car quickly drove off, leaving Dan behind. In shock, he ran down a nearby staircase, desperately trying to find her. However, the area was dark and covered in dense vegetation, making the search difficult. When he finally reached her, Alma was still alive but in agonizing pain. She cried out for help, but her injuries were severe. Emergency responders arrived soon after, but there was nothing they could do. Alma had suffered multiple fractures, and she passed away at the scene. Alma was known for her warm and outgoing personality. She loved meeting new people and immersing herself in different cultures. During her time in Salvador, she became a familiar face at a local hostel, where she quickly bonded with staff and fellow travelers. She even learned to samba and painted a colorful mandala on a hostel wall, something that remains as a lasting reminder of her presence. Her sudden passing deeply affected those who knew her. The hostel staff in Salvador remembered her as a kind and vibrant person, always smiling and eager to share stories. They recalled how she was constantly singing, laughing, and spreading joy to everyone around her, leaving a lasting impression on those she met. As for Dan Hen, his account of what happened that night raised some questions. At first, he told police they had been confronted by a motorcyclist. Later, he said it was a car. In a third statement, he explained that he and Alma had met at a hostel in Copacabana. His changing versions of events caught investigators' attention, leading them to take a closer look at what happened. Brazilian authorities have launched an investigation into Alma's death, with detectives reviewing surveillance footage and interviewing witnesses. The Capital Homicide Police Station in Rio is leading the case to determine if a robbery threat caused Alma's fatal fall. While the investigation continues, one thing remains certain. Alma was a young woman full of life and adventure. She had come to Brazil to explore, learn, and experience new things. But in one tragic moment, everything changed. Could the outcome have been different if things had played out another way? If the car had never appeared? If Dan had found her sooner in the dark? These are questions that may never have clear answers. For now, those who knew and loved Alma remember her not just for how she died, but for how she lived. A free-spirited traveler whose kindness and energy left a mark on those she met. On August 28, 2018, a family vacation in Hurghada, Egypt, turned into a nightmare. Janice Bowles, a 58-year-old grandmother from Bristol, was on a dolphin-watching excursion with her loved ones when a tragic accident took her life. The trip, organized by Thomas Cook, was meant to be a fun day on the water, but it ended in disaster. Janice was full of life, known for her humor, kindness, and love for her family. That day, she joined her daughter, Hannah Barcroft, and other family members on a banana boat ride, an inflatable tube towed by a speedboat. It was a common activity in Hurghada, popular among tourists seeking adventure. But what started as an exciting experience quickly turned into chaos. The driver, showing off by taking his hands off the wheel and leaning over the side, caused the boat to flip, throwing everyone into the sea. While most resurfaced, Janice became trapped under the overturned inflatable and couldn't free herself. Panic spread as those around her tried to help. Hannah could only watch in horror as her mother gasped for air, repeatedly sinking beneath the water. Hannah screamed for help, desperately trying to reach her, but it was too late. The minutes dragged on as Janice remained trapped, her mouth slipping under the waves again and again. Rescuers eventually pulled Janice onto the speedboat, but the damage had already been done. Her lips had turned blue and her body was lifeless. Despite frantic attempts to revive her, including chest compressions from a former soldier on board, a crucial step was missed. Her airways were never properly opened. One witness begged rescuers to help her breathe, but his pleas were ignored. When they reached the marina, emergency responders continued cardiopulmonary resuscitation, inserting tubes in an attempt to save her. Hannah, in shock, clung to her mother, begging her to wake up. But 5 minutes after arriving at the hospital, doctors confirmed the worst. Janice had passed away. Her family was shattered by the sudden and overwhelming loss. Hannah later reflected on the heartbreaking moment she had to let go, desperately trying to hold on. When she was finally pulled away from her mother's body, it felt as though her entire world had collapsed. Janice's other daughter, Anne-Marie Cox, expressed her heartbreak on social media, struggling to process the devastating loss. The news came as a profound shock to the entire family. She remembered her mother as the funniest, kindest, and most loving person she had ever known. Adding to the family's distress was a chilling connection to another recent tragedy. Just a week before Janice's accident, British couple John and Susan Cooper mysteriously lost their lives at a nearby hotel, Steigenberger Aqua Magic. Their deaths raised concerns about safety in the resort area, with speculation about possible exposure to toxic chemicals. The timing of Janice's accident only deepened the unease surrounding Hurghada's tourist activities. Following Janice's death, Thomas Cook suspended all banana boat excursions in the area and launched an investigation. A spokesperson from the company expressed condolences to the Bowles family, assuring the public that they were working to determine what went wrong. But for Janice's loved ones, no investigation could undo the pain of losing her. Hannah, still grieving, reflected on how much her mother had meant to her. She described Janice as an amazing person who would do anything to help. Janice's love for her family and her big heart had been central to her life. Her sudden loss left an emptiness in their lives that could never be filled. The tragedy raised serious questions. How could a simple water activity turn deadly? Why wasn't Janice given the proper medical support when she was pulled from the water? Could better safety measures have saved her life? Janice's death, along with the Coopers' mysterious passing, left many wondering if more could be done to protect tourists in Hurghada. Whether it was a tragic accident or something more, her family is left with unimaginable grief. One thing remains certain: Janice's absence will forever leave a void in the hearts of those who loved her.